You take me far away under sycamore trees.
Welcome to Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Ben Durant, and beside me is
Bryon Kazaska. Happy New Year, Ben.
Happy New Year! Wow, it's 2023.
Oh boy, I don't want to start. I'm gonna forget and just put 2022 on everything.
Yeah, for a week or two. That's how it goes. Yeah.
I can't believe it's a new year, Ben.
Yes, but you know what? We're not done. We are still continuing our best of last year. So we are, we can still reflect on the past year for another day or so.
Yeah. It's early. 2023 is a brand new year. We hope we have brand new, exciting moments in the Twin Peaks community. We hope to have more surprises for everybody who listens to the show. We're still going to try our best to put out one show a month.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And we're tired, but we still love Twin Peaks, and there's still things going on. There's still rumors out there, and maybe something will come true, and you never know.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
We'll just make it up as we go along,
Yeah, it's fun that way. But Ben, it's interesting because 2023 was the 7th anniversary for our
podcast. 23?
Oh, see? Oh man, I'm messing it up.
Wow, now we are living in the future here.
I know. Yeah, 2022 was the 7th anniversary of our podcast.
Wow, we've been doing this for a while here.
7 years, Ben.
That is something, isn't that? That's crazy. I don't know where the time went. It's been so much fun. I can't believe it's been that long, though.
It is crazy that we put a book out and that we've been doing this show for almost 2 years over Zoom.
Yep.
And it's weird. We were very hectic when we did a week to week, and then when we retired and we were doing these specials, it has been nice to do the shows on a Sunday afternoon from our homes, having people Zoom in. And it is a new world, and it's not, we do miss seeing each other, but honestly, sometimes this is, like, in my opinion, more relaxing. We're not like, oh my God, we got to get out. Oh my God, the studio is going to close.
True.
Oh my God, I lost my keys. There's so many things that have gone wrong when we were in the studio.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I agree. There is something to be said that we can kind of do things on our own time, and we can do it if we wanted to. We could do it at midnight. We could do it whenever we feel like it. We don't have that. I still miss seeing you, and there's still that same. Yes. I don't think it ever feels the same way, going through a computer here. But it's still, it's great that we can, no matter what, we can do it. It was awesome.
Right. Totally. I totally agree with you. But the one thing that was very cool, and Ben, I'll let you tell everybody more about behind the scenes and how this all came about. But John Thorne had Wrapped in Plastic. He happened to have all these old recordings just sitting there, and he just like, I'm going to digitize them. And there was, I think you reached out, but I'll let you explain how that.
Yeah, for a while I've heard about how Wrapped in Plastic magazine had these tapes still of their interviews they did with Twin Peaks actors. And John Thorne had just decided it was time before the tapes kind of get destroyed or something happens that he's going to try to transfer them to a digital format. And it was him that came to us that John was like, he could have done on his own podcast. He could have, but he decided, hey, that he felt like the right place. And he says all the times that he really likes what we've done and like, and that he wanted to just share this with the community. So yeah, he said that he would let us have portions of the interviews that we could share. So we got to listen to Don Davis interview, and what was the other one? We got Frank Silva for Bob there. Both we got 2 interviews from the Wrapped in Plastic archives that we got to share, and at the same time, I thought it was a great time to be able to share with the community that John was working on a book that is now out. Ominous Whoosh, A Wandering Mind Returns to Twin Peaks. John Thorne, all new book. And it's so exciting. I hope everybody by now has read it. If they haven't, it's a good time now to pick it up. I always love the winter where, you get to sit back and, stay inside while it's cold outside and just read a good book. And this has got to be one of the best of the year. John Thorne's book here.
It truly is. Now, last show I said Scott Ryan's is one of my favorite books of the year. That is more personal stories. And I want to say that John Thorne, this is like right up there as well. It's one of the best as well. And I think both can be the best because this is best on a different level. This is theories and covering the return.
Every part of return. Originally I thought it was just going to be like, okay, you're going to come up with share theories about the return. No, he covers every single part.
Right.
To go through each one of those and have some, anecdotes and some opinions about. I love it. I just think it's great.
Definitely,
and I hope we can do more. I have to reach out to John. I mean, now that it's a new year, I feel like, with us only doing one show a month, we usually have, we don't have as much time sometimes to get around to it. But I would love to go. I will reach out to John soon and see if he'd be interested in doing some more of these Wrapped in Plastic archive interviews.
I would love it. And I think the audience would love it too. I think we got a lot of great reception when we first put it out there. So let's hope 2023, John Thorne, Wrapped in Plastic, we join forces again. We get some reportings from the archives. That would be fantastic. And we're putting it out there in the universe. So hopefully it comes true, right? That's what I say. Put it out there and hopefully it will happen. Also, last podcast we had Emily on. And at the same time she was starting her podcast, Colin James was starting his podcast. So we got two brand new Twin Peaks related podcasts in 2022. Colin James put out his show called Cream Corn in the Universe podcast.
Great podcast, and they keep Twin Peaks alive, right? They keep the fandom and the excitement for this show alive by creating new content.
Right. His is weekly, and he has a guest on from the community, from another show, another whatever, a writer. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He has someone on and they will deep dive a character, and it's really fascinating. So I like hearing different opinions. He always has a different co-host. I think it makes the show fresh. I think it's always interesting to hear what he has to say. He's super sharp when it comes to Twin Peaks stuff. He references so many things. I was like, oh my God, he'll reference us, which is crazy that our podcast is being referenced. He's just so good about referencing different podcasts and books, and he's just so smart about the subject, and the people on there are so knowledgeable as well. So definitely check out his show, Cream Corn in the Universe podcast. Subscribe to it. You won't be disappointed. So we're going to go into John Thorne talking about his new book, Ominous Whoosh, A Wandering Mind Returns to Twin Peaks, and it will end with Colin James's podcast, Cream Corn in the Universe. Today, we have the one, the only, the godfather of Twin Peaks, Mr. John Thorne. I had to say it. I know we haven't said it in a long time.
But now it's more important.
Yes.
There's a lot of weight to this episode. I mean, this show here that we have John. He's got a new book. It's like 4 years in the making, John. This is so excited to get to talk about your new book.
Well, thanks, Bryon, for having me on to talk about it. I really do appreciate it. And this is the first time I've talked about it with anyone. So for better or worse, whatever that means, you guys can talk to me, ask me questions.
How long ago was it that you put out your last book? Was it like 6 years ago, maybe? Or?
Yeah. So the first book, which is The Essential Wrapped in Plastic, I kind of compiled all of the really good Twin Peaks material from the 13 years of Wrapped in Plastic into a book. That came out in April of 2016. So it's been just a little over 6 years since I put that out.
I'm sure the time when we had you on to talk about the book, I was like, when are you going to put out your next book? And
Well, it's funny because I think I've mentioned this to you before. We were talking about the new Twin Peaks, The Return. We were calling it season 3 too for a while there. And you asked me, going to write about the new Twin Peaks. And I said, yes, I'm sure I'm going to write about it, but I don't know how quickly I can do that because I'm sure it's going to be a lot to process. So 5 years after the show ended, now finally I have the new book out, which is called Ominous Whoosh, A Wandering Mind Returns to Twin Peaks. I don't know when this podcast will be out, but it's probably, the book will have been out for at least a couple of weeks by the time people are hearing this.
Yeah, and on Amazon, that's the place to go to actually order it.
is available for order. It's in a trade paperback form right now. I will be having a Kindle version out, and then also a hardcover, which is really weird.
There was at least one person on Twitter that was excited for the hard copy. So
yeah, at least one person. I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, to anyone who's listening, the hardcover is like twice as much for the same thing. So buy the paperback if you just want, or the Kindle, you get the same content. Again, I did a hardcover because I thought, why not? The option's there. Yeah. I might as well do it. And I'll get some for myself, and I'll have a few probably signed copies that I can sell at some point if anyone cares about that kind of thing. So
awesome. What was it that all of a sudden there was a spark? Suddenly said, you know what? I need to sit down and start writing. Like, what was it that suddenly made you think?
It was us. It was us then.
Yeah, right. It was you guys. You guys cracked the whip. You said, come on, do it. And somebody asked me this before, and I just said, honestly, I felt compelled to write about Twin Peaks. I'd spent so many years of my life talking about Twin Peaks. Wrapped in Plastic was 13 years of work on talking about Twin Peaks. It's part of my life. And so then there was 18 hours of new Twin Peaks, and almost for my own sake, I felt like I needed to process it. I needed to write about it, to kind of try to come to some sort of terms with it. It's it's a pretty complicated, confusing 18 hours. Kind of felt like I needed to finish the journey. That new show came on, and at that point, then I was only halfway done with Twin Peaks. I thought I was all done with my writing about it. And so I just felt like I needed to do it. And I really did write this book, more for my sake, hoping that other people might find some value in it. Certainly kept in mind audiences who might be reading this, and I'm hoping that I might be able to contribute something to Twin Peaks fandom and research and theory, but also I just felt a need to write about it.
And I got this, and I of course started off by looking at like how is it structured, the book. And it's funny, you hinted for years how this book might be, like, you've been rewatching all the parts and all this, but in my head I was like, okay, this is going to be a all theory book, and it is actually a book where you go and you dive into every single part of season 3, and they have theory in there, and you have, like, you step back a little from time to time, but I didn't realize, oh wow, you really did. You get basically a chapter on every part of season 3, The Return, which I love. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, at first that's all it was going to be. It was just I was going to write my way through the 18 hours. I'm going to have a chapter for every part, and I started doing that. And there's quite a bit of material that didn't even end up in the book, because I wrote about, you name the scene, and I wrote something about it. I wrote every scene, even if it was a minor scene, like Gordon Cole and Diane share a cigarette in the stairwell. I mean, I wrote about it. Wow. And then later, after all that was done, I realized a lot of this, it's not contributing necessarily to my discussion of what I think the show is what it's about and what it's doing. So I edited out a lot of that. But yes, I did. I went through all 18 hours, and I had some ideas. I had some theories. And as I went along, I realized some of those theories, some of those deeper dives needed their own chapters. And so in addition to each chapter for each part, there's 8 or 10 essays that are interspersed where I take on one particular topic and kind of try to really unwrap it, no pun intended. And so there's a chapter on Diane, there's a chapter on Audrey, there's a chapter on the core chapter in the middle of the book is Laura Palmer and what her function is in the new story. There's a chapter on Cooper's divided self and his soul. There's, essays about all of this. There's an essay about communication and Lynch's theories of ideas. And those are all interspersed throughout the book. You could skip those if you wanted. You could read just the 18 chapters and still get the idea of what I'm thinking, of what's happening in this story. Those essays that are interspersed just give you that extra detail on what I think's happening.
Like each chapter, it's like so meaty, John. When I listen to In Your House Now, right? You and Josh and whoever your guest is sometimes, it gets me going, just thinking. And like, I don't know what it is. You are just so good at painting such a great picture in your mind. You're such a great writer. and speaker when it comes to Twin Peaks that like when I listen to that podcast, I'm like already thinking like an hour the day later, I'm thinking about what you guys talked about. Reading this book, it's the same way. I'm hearing you narrate the book to me after a chapter. I need a good 10 minutes just to, because I'm already like, as I'm reading it, the things you're bringing out in me and my imagination and my thoughts, I have to stop. I'm like, oh my God, I just read a chapter. I'm not processing because I'm thinking about what you just brought up in that last paragraph.
Yeah.
So I got to reread that again because I'm lost in my own thoughts. How great you are in expressing your thoughts when it comes to this topic, and how I just get lost. I get lost in what you're discussing all the time, and I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that. And you know, you're hitting on something that I hope does happen, which is I'm throwing out a lot of theory and deep dive, but I know that it's just much of it is just my take on it, and that other people might see it differently. And
Right.
the best thing that can happen is if someone's reading it and they're like, I just thought of something brand new. It's not in the book, but you made me think of this idea. That's the kind of stuff I like to read. I've read a lot of stuff. Martha Nachemson has written great stuff on David Lynch, and there's an essayist named Tim Kreider who I comment a little bit about in the book. And I read those folks, and I don't necessarily agree with what they're posing, but I'm like, wow, I just thought of it in a different way. If I hadn't read that, I wouldn't have thought of this. And so then I'm like all ready to kind of come up with my own take. So I hope that happens. I hope people don't just read it with, I'm telling you what is happening, but I'm suggesting, rather, I hope they see that I'm suggesting these ideas and that you might interpret it different than I do. That's the ideal situation.
Yeah,
totally. And there are times where I've listened to the podcast, and in the book, I haven't gotten to that yet, but in the podcast, there's parts where I'm like, I don't know if I agree with what they're saying, but it's making me think of different things that I would not have thought about.
You know, it's like assembling some pieces of the puzzle. Yeah. And if I can just show you what the pieces are, like, oh yeah, there's some pieces I didn't see before, then I put them together this way. But you might say, or a reader might say, I didn't think about those pieces. I'm going to put them together in a different way. Yeah. That is, that's the hope.
Well worth the 4-year wait for this. So this is awesome. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for giving me some time and carving out some time on your busy schedules. I really do appreciate it. I want people to know about it. This is the best place to go and talk about it. So thanks.
Just you and I, just you.
My thing with Ronette is that I'm thinking of Dale Cooper's intro, where when he's driving at Twin Peaks, he talks about the girl down the railroad tracks, and it seems like if we're just based off that, having no knowledge of like Laura or anything from before that point in the pilot, it seems like everything about Ronette would take more precedent in some cases, because in Fire Walk with Me, she goes through pretty much all the same events that Laura does. It's like with Jacques and Leo being taken to the train, then like barely surviving and just like walking for hours on end before people can see her. She shares a lot of that journey. And I think the biggest irony, and maybe in cases hypocrisy in the town, is that Laura, she's found dead, and it's like everyone in the whole town is just devastated. And conversely, Ronette, she's still alive, but she's not really talked about. She's only just like a footnote to them.
Yeah, exactly. Because Ronette isn't the perfect victim. She isn't the beautiful homecoming queen. She doesn't come from a wonderful, middle-class family that's big in society there. She comes from a working class family. She isn't as well known within the community. And if Ronette had have been the one to die, then it would have been, high school girl, she was doing drugs, she was a prostitute, she died, it happens. They would have just moved on. With Laura, because the outer side of her life was so perfect, it just so much more came out of the woodwork about what was going on underneath. But we have to remember that without Ronette crossing the state line, the FBI wouldn't have been involved, and we would have no Cooper. Well, we would have a Cooper. He would exist. He wouldn't have been in Twin Peaks. So she's the crux of the story right from the beginning. And I
suppose is a really interesting tool for David Lynch to play Gordon Cole, and that's the whole scene with Denise where in The Return. And that's a really beautiful thing, because what he gets to do is he gets to spell out to the audience, no, don't get this twisted. We brought in this character. This was done with respect. There wasn't the language that there is now, and you have no right to be offended, because we took this character and we, first trans person, well, obviously not trans, but, to first trans character on television as far as I'm aware. So, they did a sort of huge thing with it. And I just really love the way that the whole scene with Denise and Gordon is just that they get, the fix your heart to die, but he gets to really spell out to the audience exactly what his intentions were. And also, there's also just a whole thing where he's not 100% down with everything, the bit where she's talking about her hormones and he's just really uncomfortable and just like, which for such a sort of ladies' man, I was like, oh, that's such an interesting moment, because we are so far away from the shouting joke of a character. This is nuanced, this is leveled, this is just brilliant. It's so watchable.
Oh no, I think the scene with Denise, I like that scene so much. I know everyone has the fix your hearts or die, but I think what I love is that it's like you said, is that in 1990, or I guess for her scenes it would be 1991. Because most anytime I've watched any movies or shows with a trans person, it was always kind of played up as a joke for the most part, or it was handled in like.
Have you seen Ace Ventura recently? Oh my God.
Yes. Or there's that scene from Dude, Where's My Car, where I don't know if you watched that, but even stuff like Nip Tuck, where it's like they're kind of handled in a mature way, but probably not the most sensitive way. And that was for me, that's the first time where I saw someone trying to play it in a serious manner. But here we have Denise from 1991, and way ahead of its time, at least 20 years. I would say closer to 30.
Massively.
And the thing is that David Duchovny is so good in that role that I remember when I did my last rewatch of season 3, I thought to myself, if David Duchovny, if he had the schedule, I would have been totally cool with Denise effectively replacing Tammy in terms of Cole, Albert, and Denise, where Cooper's been missing for 25 years and they're all coming back together to find him. Since we're talking about Dr. Jacoby, I kind of figured that he's one of those characters where he is likable, but there's also a lot of things to not like about him all at once. And I think if we're going to start with the most unlikable aspect, I think of the part in The Missing Pieces where it's pretty irrefutable that in his case that there is a very inappropriate romance that he feels towards Laura. Because, in the show, he presents it as if, actually even The Secret Diary, where Laura, she spots that he has feelings for her and that he likes the quote-unquote two Lauras. And so when they talk in The Missing Pieces, he's asking for a tape and he wants to have a kiss, and it just showcases that there's a more than creepy undertone with Jacoby.
Yeah, he's definitely been on a path of I don't know if it's exactly a redemption, but there's a certain amount of that he started out as. And I'm honestly, I don't think I'm that much of a fan of the character up until season 3 because of stuff like this. I mean, he's a really complicated dude, because he seems to know his stuff, but then it's always for these ulterior motives, it seems like.
And actually, this is one I've only brought up a few times, but the first time I watch it, when she says Bob has been having his way with me since I was 12, I don't know if you watched Gerald's Game, but there's a scene where Carla Gugino, she's reflecting on after her 12th birthday, where she has a pretty inappropriate encounter with her father. And the thing is that she talks about how she theorizes that after her 12th birthday, she had her period and it set him off. And this is something I think because I know a lot of people feel very strongly about there's no Bob, it's just Leland, or Bob is possessed by Leland. But that was a certain factor that I thought of that probably adds a certain degree of credibility that it is just Leland, because, especially since Ray Wise, he also views it in the same sentiment as well.
I've always thought there was, especially like after season 3 of Twin Peaks, like I think Bob is real, but I think it's more like inside of Leland. So she's seeing Bob's true face. And like, I know there's all the theories that like she uses Bob so she doesn't have to put together that it is her father. But I think on some level she sees the true face. Cause like when she's over with Harold and she has that moment where she says, "Fire, walk with me." And you get the glimpse of like the dead looking Laura, like I guess demonic, for lack of a better word.
And it seems like Jacoby's very selective because it shows in pretty much all media that Jacoby's kind of burned out and passive in his role, but he sees something in Nadine and how like the fact that she doesn't have that eye. But he talks about how he even entertains the idea that her losing the eye was deliberate because of how it affects her brain. So he says that he speculates if it's deliberate, and if so, that she deliberately shut down a pathway to her intuitive side. And then also, one thing that's worth mentioning is that her mother was manic depressive. I wasn't sure if that all this just where you come from as a psychotherapist, if any of that kind of rings true to you, or if it seems contradictory.
Yeah, that's a great question, Colin. I mean, one of the things that was so helpful about preparing to talk to you today was to go back and look at the secret history and to look at this Dr. Jacoby report and learn more about her family of origin history. So when I wrote Run Silent, Run Drapes, What Nadine's Story Teaches Us About Trauma Loops, Trauma Healing, and Trauma Recovery on 25YL, I hadn't gone back to look at her family of origin history, and I'm really glad that I did, to learn about her mom, for example, who is manic depressive, which is, we used to call it that, now it's called bipolar experience. It's the same thing. And that really aligns with some of the behaviors that we see in Nadine. We know bipolar there's a genetic predisposition for bipolar experience. And when we see Nadine's kind of manic energy, expansive energy, high highs, and also her really low lows, her depression, her, attempt to die by suicide attempt, that we see that manifesting in her as well. Also a little bit of a maybe predisposition for like a psychotic experience of a delusion of, believing that she's back in high school, which is awesome. So I think I love that part. I love her going back in time, which I'll say more about. But, learning about the history there of her mom's mental health and also her dad's alcoholism was really important too. So here's a home environment that is really, really unstable for Nadine.
Thank you, Colin James. And, it was great to see him at the Spooky Empire event that I went to way back in October there. That was another one that sometimes just being able to run into people and hang out a little bit. It was fun I believe I was sitting right next to him during the panel too. So we got a little bit of time to talk, and great podcast. Go check it out. Go subscribe. Cream Corn and the Universe podcast.
So Ben, this year, 2022, I should say, was the year that David Lynch rumors hit the apex, and it was like intense. I was just like, no way, these can't be true. And then the Hollywood Reporter decided to all of a sudden report on tweets or
if Hollywood Reporter said it's true, it must be true.
Yeah, right. Well, now we know it is not. But Ben, what happened?
Not only that I think it was true because Hollywood Reporter said it was true, my wife had heard about it too, which my wife does not, she likes Twin Peaks and all and David Lynch, but she's not like heavily like looking for this stuff every single day. So when she said it was like, wow, it's, it's out there. It must be true.
And I was like, you were texting me. I'm like, I don't believe it. Until I hear it from David Lynch, I do not believe any of this. But
I really did believe it.
People were riled up. I don't blame anybody for getting riled up because the Hollywood Reporter had reported on this about Sundance, that there was going to be a mysterious David Lynch movie.
They fit him in just so we could see it. Yes, I know. It was a big deal. It was showcased.
Yeah.
He might win an award for this. He might win a Cannes.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, they got this reporting from a Twitter user that had no that had no clout, that there was no you could not look into this at all. It was just a rumor.
Oh my
You know?
gosh.
They didn't do their homework. That's not
No.
reporting.
It was a slow day at the
Yeah.
it was a slow day for them, so they were like, what can we find? Let's go to social media. This
Right.
person says this, let's just run with it.
Yeah, let's not look into it. Let's not actually get evidence that it's happening, because that you just call Sundance up and say, listen, this is a rumor. Can you confirm? And if Sundance is like, we can't confirm, well, then maybe something's up. But
Yeah.
if Sundance is like, no, this is not real, then you can report on that. But they didn't do that. And it really got really excited for the possibilities of Twin Peaks season 4, maybe a Twin Peaks related movie.
Right. Unrecorded nights.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, it was bogus. David Lynch's people, they put a statement out saying this is not true. Because I think it was getting a little out of hand. It was out of control. I'm sad to see everybody so disappointed. And I'm hoping we will get something more than a weather report in 2023, But I don't know. It's tough. Lynch is old. Pandemic didn't help. I don't know. What's your prediction for 2023? Do we see something from Lynch other than a weather report and a number of the day?
Well, he's going back into acting again here. Did you hear about this?
He is in Spielberg's new movie, The Fabelmans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something. I mean, I like it. Right. Which by
Cameo.
now it would be out. It became nationwide on November 23rd.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I honestly want to believe that something from Lynch comes out, or that he announces either a TV project or a film project or something. I feel like this feels like a good year. I feel like pandemic is better. I feel like I'm predicting before the end of this year that we will get an announcement for a new David Lynch project. I don't know what it is. I don't believe it's going to be Twin Peaks related. There's just too many complications right now for that. I feel like, I don't know. I just don't feel like, I don't know. I don't get the sense that Mark Frost came together and they're going to make a new Twin Peaks. I would love it, but it doesn't feel that way.
No. And I mean, that was a long process. So for him to do that, that's another long process. But
although he did say it could take 5 years to. I mean, he originally said when the return ended, he said, "Well, it would take several years, like it took this time."
Yeah.
So it has been 5 years since the return ended. So maybe all this time they've been working on Twin Peaks and we didn't know about it.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Kyle is now in a new show. He's on the Fallout series on Amazon.
Oh, that's right. I'm intrigued by that, based on the video game, right?
Yes, that's why. Yes. I mean, I'm sure they're having him do the cons because it's going to help promote the new Fallout series.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I really like the Fallout video game, and I would like to see. Hopefully, that's a good show there. Yeah. But if we can make it a Twin Peaks movie. Carrie Page and Cooper there go on a new adventure together. It
would be great. I love it.
Great. So we'll see.
Here's to the new year.
To the new year.
And more David Lynch rumors. We're gonna go into the next clip. Our friend Cameron Cloutier, which I believe I said correctly, he put out his fan movie, Queen of Hearts, a Twin Peaks fan film, this year. He put it out in 3 parts. Then he put the whole thing together. We actually had him on at the end of the year of 2022. It was an interview a long time coming. It was great to have him on the show.
I mean, Cameron's been doing so much great work that he's been doing on Obnoxious and Anonymous, which is the YouTube channel that he does. I mean, if he is a whisper of something, he will give special announcement, and he'll put a show out there. And I love that. I do subscribe to that channel, and I love when he does some new things. And he's got great guests on the show all the time. Joel's been on there before. I mean, Take the Ring has been on there a lot. I think he does a lot of good work. So I would definitely check out his YouTube channel. And, we've got this clip of him on our show.
We do. And following said clip, you're going to hear from friends of the show as well. Manners and Madness, a Jane Austen, David Lynch podcast. Maya Adkins and Christian Cabrera. Fantastic podcast. You'll hear a little clip they sent us for all of you to listen to. And we'll be right back after that. We have Cameron Cloutier from Obnoxious and Anonymous, his YouTube channel, with his film
Queen of Hearts, a Twin Peaks fan film. Cameron, it's been a long time coming. How is it going?
It's nice to be done with the film.
Are you really ever done with anything? I mean, like,
well, you know what, to be honest, that might be correct, because my wife and I took a sort of hike near an area where I shot one of the sequences, and I realized that I didn't credit that location in the special thanks. So I went back like that night and added it in. So there's like one extra credit that needs to be put back into the film.
That's great.
But I told myself it's not a person, and it's not a piece of music. So I think I can get away with it. So
right. Well, this is like an epic 4-hour Twin Peaks fan film. I mean, it is something else. I remember thinking like, oh, I'll wait for, it all to be put together. And Cameron, you and I were messaging back and forth. It's like, it's 4 hours. Like, whoa, what? I was like thinking, it's a feature film. I mean, I've done some like just a little bit of feature film stuff that were like for college and stuff. It's like, oh, it's going to be an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. It's like, no, this is 4 hours. I mean, that is a lot of work to put into that.
It wasn't meant to be. I'll be honest with you. Because the script is, I believe the script's 98 pages. And so I thought, okay, it's going to be roughly around maybe like a Fire Walk With Me length.
Yeah.
And then of course you add in those Twin Peaks pauses, right? And that's going to carry it over. Also, we had 150 scenes in the script. Now, obviously not all of them were filmed because of the pandemic, but obviously a good chunk of them were. So if you take 150 scenes, and even if one of, every scene is 2 minutes, that's going to be a 5-hour film. Right. The fact that we got it down to about 3:45 with credits, that takes it to 4. It's kind of the El Mariachi of Twin Peaks films, because it's pretty fast in terms of like the speed.
Yeah, I love like the history of how this came about.
Like everybody, of our age saw Fire Walk With Me in the theater. I was a huge fan, obviously, of the series. Couldn't wait to see Fire Walk With Me. Saw it in the theater, and there was, I really enjoyed it. As I said to John Thorne the other day, I had a few sticklers, and because I was, I'm kind of a continuity person, but I really enjoyed the film overall, and I think I really love it now that the missing pieces are out, and especially if you can see the full fan cut right now.
Yeah,
like that to me is like that is what David Lynch intended the film to be, but he couldn't do it because of the theatrical runtime. But anyway, so I saw, of course, the scene of Annie giving Laura the message. And I thought that is really a bold choice, because if you, look at her character in the series, and she's this former nun, suicidal ex-nun, right? It's like, how bad does the world have to be with Mr. C out there? Or I considered the doppelganger at that time. How bad is it going to be out there in the world for her to have to go back in time? Some people equate it as a dream sequence. I kind of look at it as her going back in time in some way to give Laura this message. I thought, wow, it's got to be really bad out there, for somebody who is going to defy time and space, who, believes in God and the universe and all that. And then the ending of Fire Walk With Me with Laura and Cooper in the Red Room, and thinking how bittersweet that they're trapped in this horrible place, but they're safer in there than they are out in the world. Right. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool? So a few months later, I'm sitting with some friends, and they said, if you ever got into a room with Mark Frost and David Lynch, now keep in mind at this point, they were still doing On the Air together and all that. Right. So the assumption was that they were going to continue being partners. What would you pitch to them? And I had never really thought about it. And then it kind of reminded me of that moment in Fire Walk With Me. And I thought, it'd be really great to tell the story of Annie Blackburn post season 2, how she got to Laura, but also cross that with Wyndham and Caroline, because obviously in the second season finale, there's this, with Cooper in the Black Lodge, there's Annie and Caroline are interchangeable. Right. And and Annie was kind of set up to be sort of the redemption arc for the Caroline thing anyway. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to kind of take a sort of a Godfather 2 approach and tell both stories where, Annie's going to get to Laura, Cooper and Caroline and Wyndham are all that tragedy, but it's going to culminate in both women in the Black Lodge looking at each other wearing the same dress. Right. And I thought that would be kind of a cool thing. And that is where it stopped. Right. I thought I kind of just made a mental note, like, that'd be really cool. Never thought in a million years I would do it. Never even pursued to doing it. Never wrote the script, anything. So we get to season 3, and I'm like very excited because I'm thinking they're gonna deal with Annie in some way. They have to.
Yeah, right.
I mean, even
We all
Lynch,
thought that. Yeah.
right? Because I mean, David Lynch, even in the book Lynch on Lynch, he mentions Annie visiting Laura. He mentions the fact that it would be like, I think he said something like if someone in the 20s mentioned Lee Harvey Oswald or something like that. So I knew that was on his mind. So I thought, okay, we're gonna deal with this in some way, some form. And we kind of got that scene with Hawk and Truman, and where Hawk doesn't even remember how many diary pages there are because he's completely off on his count. But and then of course, the yellow pages that Laura obviously had to write Annie's thing on that because she already gave her diary to Harold Smith, so it couldn't be included, right?
Right.
So I kept thinking, okay, Heather Graham is going to be one of those people that it was not on the cast list that is going to show up.
Yep.
And then she didn't show up. So I started thinking, okay, well, because I think soon after season 3 ended, Thor Lee came out with the Summer House at Pearl Lakes.
Yeah,
right?
really good.
And it was like, I think it was like a 5-minute. The first one was like a 5-minute short. I think it was roughly around that. And a friend of mine said, you should check this out. And I was like, I didn't know Thor, and I still don't, but I mean, I didn't know of him, and I didn't know the film. I knew someone told me at one at like the Twin Peaks Fest, I think up in Washington when the fest was there. And so I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this is something you can do now because obviously technology is cheaper and doesn't look like, I mean, no offense to Inland Empire, it doesn't look like that anymore, right? I mean, you can kind of get HD. And so I thought, okay, well, that would be an idea. And so I started floating around the idea on my channel because I was, like you said, I was doing daily, if not weekly videos because we were still coming down off that season 3 high, still trying to figure out what the heck some of it meant, right? If anything, even if it just, what did it mean to us personally, if not what it actually means? And I thought, anyway, so I started floating this idea, like, should I do this? Wouldn't it be, I thought this is going to be a little bit more expensive than what Thor did. And
Cameron, do you have a video production background? For some reason I thought you did. Do you?
I've done films. I went to film school for a little bit, but I also worked in news.
Okay.
So, and obviously that's a completely different thing, right?
Yeah.
But you did learn how to shoot fast and edit fast, right?
Right.
You got to make that 6 o'clock deadline.
Yeah.
Anyway, so so people kept encouraging me, like, you should really do this. And I thought, okay. And then I got wind that the final dossier was coming out and there was going to be a subject on Annie Blackburn. And I thought, okay, well, this is where this movie idea stops, because I know a lot of people out there would say, well, it's your story. You do what you want. Yeah, but I'm a stickler for this kind of stuff. I am not going to do something that is going to trample on what Lynch or Frost, even individually, are doing. So if Frost had written something, I don't know, about Annie that completely I couldn't do anything with, this movie would not exist. So anyway, the final dossier is coming out and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is where it's going to stop. And it comes out and it talks about how Annie is in the hospital and she's in there for one day and she's talkative and then she goes completely silent. And I was like, well, I kind of need her to get out of the hospital. That's kind of, But Frost says she stays in the hospital, and then it dawned on me, yeah. But if I can move all the speaking scenes to one day, so like her talking to Major Briggs, her talking to Norma, her talking to the doppelganger, instead of being spread out, because originally my story was going to be she got out of the hospital and was staying with the doppelganger in the hotel room, and then realized that this wasn't Dale Cooper and she had to get out of there. But season 3 had set up this timeline where pretty much the day after Cooper came out, or the doppelganger came out of the lodge, that he confronted Major Briggs and left town. So I knew I had to have that timeline. And then I thought, okay, well, if she's talking for one day, great. Then that fits that timeline. It fits everything. but she's in the hospital forever, like kind of just quiet. And I thought, you know what? We're going to tulpa her. And that's what I did. And so that way it fits in with the final dossier, but then I'm still able to tell my story. And I think I was constantly showing pictures while I was editing the film of Annie in the hospital. And people are saying, how are you going to have a protagonist where she's just comatose in the hospital? Yep. And then once they saw the film and saw what I did, they realized, you bastard, like, I can't believe it. But it just made perfect sense, right? That you could just do that, especially since she was kind of in a terrible state after confronting the doppelganger. I thought, well, that's where the tulpa is going to be, comatose and frightened. So anyway, so I didn't think anything of it. And then again, the final dossier came out. I figured I could do this. So I started doing the campaign. And first thing I want to say, because there's been some misconceptions out there, but is that the first person I even reached out to prior to even doing the campaign and was Sabrina Sarlin. She basically wrote back and said, thank you for telling me. I can't wait to see this. Good luck with it. From what I've heard, I haven't gotten official confirmation from anybody in Lynch Productions who've seen it, but I have heard that probably many of them have seen it. And, so that makes me happy.
Cameron, it was great having you on the show. Do you want to plug the movie? You want to say where people can follow you?
So Queen of Hearts, Twin Peaks fan film. You can find it on the Annie Blackburn YouTube channel, and you can follow me on the YouTube channel, Obnoxious and Anonymous.
Hello, welcome to Manners and Madness. My name is Maya.
And I'm Christian, and we are a Jane Austen and David Lynch podcast. And yes, you heard that right, Jane Austen and David Lynch. No, it's a little bit of an odd pairing, but it really works for us. We've come to find out.
They somehow go together. We really want to thank Ben and Bryon and Twin Peaks Unwrapped for giving us this opportunity to share a podcast with you.
Yeah, and so you'll hear 2 clips from some of our recent episodes. The first clip you'll hear is from our season 2 finale of Twin Peaks. And the second is from our Halloween show for this year, Death Comes to Pemberley, which is a sequel to Pride and Prejudice and a little bit of a murder mystery.
Yes, so we had a very good time with that one.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Did not think we'd ever get a Jane Austen Halloween special, but
this is our second one so
far. It's our second one, 2 years in a row.
If I had one word for this episode, it would be devastating.
Yeah, it was devastating. Is a great word for it, because I didn't know what to expect. We had about 20 minutes worth of Black Lodge scenes, and I was like, what is happening? My brain is scrambled. And then the ending is devastating for sure.
Well, like every single scene, there's only one scene that isn't devastating in the entire episode. And
It's the opening scene, right?
I've seen it. This is burned into my brain like nothing else from the show. But watching it this time, I was like, wait a minute. That's all there is? Like 5 scenes in this whole entire episode? I guess because I think it was released back to back with Mr. Peaks.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess my brain remembers the whole thing as one long episode, but like just watching it on its own as one episode, I was like, it's like there's nothing to this episode except for blow after blow after blow.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, like it's cliffhangery without being like so intentionally cliffhangery. Like I could see it definitely like before the 25 years later came out, which I'm like, I know the significance of 25 now. Yes. I could totally see it just coming to an end, and you kind of, you get your ending without getting out like all the satisfaction of it, but it's like kind of, devastating, like you said at the end. And I don't know, I'm like, I want there to be a season 3 that came out right after it because I wanted things to keep going.
Oh my God. I know. I mean, they were definitely trying to leave it so that the studio would want to pick them back up because you're like
Right.
left with so much and yeah, the fact that they didn't is the worst thing to ever happen in history. No, I'm just kidding.
In television history.
I'm just kidding.
Right.
But it was devastating as a 12-year-old. It's still devastating. I still, watching it this time, had to text you, even though I didn't,
Right.
say anything about it. But I was like, oh my God, I have to talk to you about this. And then I had to call my sister and talk to her about it, even though,
You
we're
both have
both
watched
quite
it.
familiar with what happens.
Well, it's such an episode that you kind of need to talk about it because so much is happening, and they're, especially like the Black Lodge scenes, are so like quintessential, like absurdist David Lynchian kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And that like
this
you
is
can't-
such a Lynch episode.
exactly, you can't help but talk about it, even if you've seen it a million times, because it's like, am I finding out new details? I just need to talk about this crazy scene, and oh God,
Yeah.
it was so good though.
Like, leaves you with a heartache.
Yeah.
Especially knowing then and knowing now that like we're never really gonna resolve it. We do have a season 3, which is great and it's its own thing, but it does not make the ending of season 2 feel better. Like
Right.
you're not like, oh, everything I always wanted to know. It's not like that. So it's just like, this is the end.
Yeah. And I guess it's like, you can maybe fit it into one of those like realism kind of endings where it's like, it's not always like realism, like it's not always going to be a happy ending, blah, blah, but like it kind of, with the supernatural aspect of it. Exactly. I feel like the supernatural aspect of it really just bumps it up to like, okay, the world is ending.
Oh, totally. It's such an awesome episode too. Like the whole final Red Room sequence is like, it's almost what you remember from the Red Room. Like,
right.
There was so little of it. We only got it really in like 2 episodes?
Yeah.
Out of the whole series, and this is like the biggest chunk we've ever had of it. And
right.
So much theorizing and lore has been basically built probably upon just this one scene. And, when Fire Walk With Me comes, we definitely get to explore it more and give it more context. But like, whew, it's just, I can't wait to talk about it because
me too.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, it was, yeah, it was really crazy.
Oh, I wrote, this is really beautiful. Well, that's Beverly, I guess.
Well, it was like when she got dropped off at their cottage, it was like this fairy tale cottage where she has to hop across on some stones across the river to get to the front door. And I was like, where are we?
Yeah. And when she's leaving, she's following this really pretty river, and then she sees a ghost.
Or is it a ghost?
But not really a ghost.
Just a cat lady. She hissed at her.
I think I recognize her too, but I didn't look her up.
Same.
Because I kind of forgot about her by the time I was doing the IMDb, which means she's probably the killer.
But what's the motive? Who is she?
But that's when things start to get spooky.
I think I'm gonna, at the end of every episode, I'm gonna be like, this is my guest on this episode.
Okay.
And well, I guess for the next 2 episodes, because by the third one we'll know who did it. But my guest for this episode is Colonel Fitzwilliam. He's very suspicious. I mean, at this point, it could be Elizabeth. Who knows?
Elizabeth, of all the people.
It could be little Master Fitzwilliam. You never know.
It could be Jane hiding in the woods.
That's what you get for ruining my sisters.
I'm definitely, though, going to say that this ghost woman will be playing into it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what that's all about. This feral woods woman.
We don't start with a ghostly woods woman and not, it's Chekhov's Ghost in the Woods.
I agree. I am interested to see where we go with that storyline, just because I'm like, it has to play into the murder. So
yeah,
let's see.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that now you are enticed to come try out a full-sized episode or two with us.
Yes. And for next year, for 2023, Manage the Madness, it's kind of up in the air.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what we're doing, but there's still so much stuff to cover. On the David Lynch side, we've got Hotel Room. We'll probably do that next year. Lost Highway, I know we'll probably do that next year. We want to do Industrial Symphony #1 and The Art Life. And there's just still a ton on the David Lynch side to cover, not to mention all of Twin Peaks Season 3 and Firewalk with Me. We still have a lot.
Plenty.
And on the Jane Austen side, there's also countless options still to cover.
Plenty of adaptations, plenty of books left to read. So we've only just touched the surface.
Yes.
And we've been a podcast for about 3 years. And as you can see, there's plenty more to cover. So we've definitely got a lot in store going forward. And sometimes we just like to throw in some curveballs, to keep things a little bit fresh, a little interesting, might be inspired by, might be inspiration to these two auteurs.
Yes. So we really want to thank you, Ben and Bryon, again, and thank you all for listening. And we hope that you'll come check us out at Manners and Madness on whatever podcasting platform you prefer. Good night.
Bye.
So that's from Manners and Madness clip there. And, Maya is one of the unseen players that she does a lot of the recordings of unseen movies or Twin Peaks. And she recently did the unseen Firewalk with Me scenes. And shout out to Maya and, of course, to all the other unseen players. I love the great work that they do. They take the script that I give them about these scenes. They put their own twist on it and their own, just who they are. And I just love everything that they've done. And I really thank them for their time and for doing this for our shows for all this time. I keep hoping somehow we'll get we could get the return season 3 script. If we could get that, would there be any scenes? A lot of times, honestly, they say there is nothing really there, that they really used up everything that was in the script pretty much in the show. So there is no more missing pieces. There's no more Twin Peaks scripts, but we've had so much fun over the years doing this. We've been doing this for several years, and I just want to say thank you to the unseen players for all your time and being willing to do this with us. It's been so much fun.
Oh yeah, they do such a great job, Ben. And Ronnie Rocket was awesome. We did that last year.
Yeah, that was last year's special, right? We did our best of here.
What are we going to do in 2023? What can we possibly do? I mean, we're running out of
not done One Saliva Bubble.
Is there a script for that?
There's a script. Oh. There might be 2 scripts. There's at least 1 script.
Well, then I think
maybe that's next year. Let us know. Reach out to us, email us, DM us. Tell us would you guys be interested in a show on One Saliva Bubble?
Ben, I really think we should do it. If we did Ronnie Rocket, we gotta do One Saliva Bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. All right. Well, Ben, we're coming to a close. I did tease this a long time ago.
Now, is this inappropriate of us to be sharing this? This is like a side thing. The people are going to think that we're pretty bad people, that we go around trying to steal guests from other podcasts.
Well, I feel there should be a transparency out there. And, people did hear Scott, you had time, listen. If you haven't, pause right now, go to Red Room Podcast, listen to his mystery episode, the mystery guest, who is Kimberly Ann Cole, who played Lil. He interviewed her. The podcast really goes into depth how Stephen Miller helped find out where Kimberly Ann Cole, who she was, how to get a hold of her, and Scott did so. Well, come to find out, we were on the same trail as they were. Great minds think alike, as they say. We actually, by accidentally, called her during said interview she was having with Scott. So I figured this would be
wasn't an accident, though.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, maybe. I don't know. So we're going to end the show off with our unheard audio. And I will say this, unfortunately, I had the recording backwards. We recorded us talking to her to get her off the phone with Scott. But then when we actually went to do the interview, I hit pause. So unfortunately, there is no unheard interview, but you get to hear us trying to coax her off the phone with Scott, which is still kind of funny. And I guess that interview we did with her, she told us a lot of great information that unfortunately will never be heard.
I think she had like 5-minute scene there where she gave all of the mysteries of Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
that she was going into detail about everything that like.
It was amazing.
Like what happened to Chet Desmond? What will happen to Chet Desmond? And
she knew it all.
And she knew it all about the ring and about the monkey at the end, about Judy. She gave us all the information we could ever desire.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I never hit record. I hit pause, so it was just for us. So I think that's just as good. So I hope everybody had a great New Year. We'll be back in 2023 with some new shows.
It is 2023.
Yeah, new episodes.
We'll be back sometime this year.
Yeah, we'll be back sometime this year. We hope everybody has enjoyed the last 2 episodes we put out for our best of Twin Peaks in 2022. We hope to have a fantastic new year. And if you have a comment, question, or theory, give us an email at twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. You can follow us on all social medias. Ben does Twitter. I do the Facebooks. We're everywhere.
Are you in the meta universe?
I am in the meta universe right now, I think.
We got to get you a VR so that, if people want to chat or hang out with you, you could be in the metaverse. And
yeah, we're all in the metaverse, really.
We'd all be in the red room together.
That would be kind of cool.
That would be cool.
Podcast in the red room?
Yes.
All right, so enjoy our unheard interview, in quotes, with Kimberly Ann Cole, and we'll be back next month.
See you soon.
Chet, your surprise. Her name is Lil.
Hi, I'm Scott. How are you?
I'm Kim.
Hi, Kim.
How did you track me down? Because I used a different name.
Well, the funny thing is I've been searching for you for over a decade.
Wow.
And I could never find you. And I did this book and I have a full color picture of you in the book.
So what can I answer for you?
Well, I just figured we'd talk about how you got the part, what it was like to film.
It was really fun to film. It was David Lynch and Chris Isaac made me laugh so hard my stomach hurt.
Yeah, that's amazing. And did you have any idea that people were dying to find you? I mean, do you want people to know that you're you and you were in Lil? I mean, how do you feel about it?
I don't mind.
So nobody's talked to you about this in all these years?
No.
That seems crazy to me. Like, people would want to meet you so badly. I mean, because that character is there's something about her that people just love.
That's nice to hear.
And even with your writing, you have a book out.
Yes.
Tell us the name of your book.
It's called The Fascination of What's Difficult, A Life of Maud Gunn. It's because I'm kind of I have an MA in Irish studies from NYU, and I got hooked by Maud Gunn.
And she was connected to Yeats, right?
Yes, he proposed to her 4 times and wrote poetry to and about her for 38 years. It was an obsession worthy of a David Lynch movie.
Mm-hmm.
Who's calling?
It's someone else. They're trying to scoop me. I'm being scooped.
I'm gonna hold and accept.
Hi, Kimberly. It's Ben
and Bryon
from Twin Peaks Unwrapped. We know you're talking to Scott, but we've got so many great questions and things to ask you about Firewalk with Me. If you could just get off the phone with him, don't tell him anything, and talk with us, it'll be great.
Yeah, and I just tell him, okay, I get it. We don't want him to know it's us. So could you just come up with a story? Just say we're the carpet cleaners or something like that. And, just kind of don't tell him it's us because he might be upset. All right.
Yeah, so we'll call you like in maybe 10 minutes or, 10, 30 minutes, something like that. We'll call you back real soon.
All right. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
There.
Hi. So I was just assuming it was a rival Twin Peaks podcast trying to scoop me. That's all.
But everyone was in a really good mood and it was really fun to do.
10 minutes later.
I got along really well with Chris Isaac, so we ended up working out together afterwards.
Ah, that's nice. Did you have him sing for you?
Of course. And did you reach out to Kiefer Sutherland?
Yes, I contacted Kiefer's people and they just passed, which happens sometimes.
Hold on 1 second.
It's the rug.
Sorry. Hello?
Yes.
Hi, it's the carpet person.
Okay.
Do you have more questions for me or
No,
anything?
this is good. This is great.
right.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm so appreciative. It brings back wonderful memories.
And it was great to finally get to talk with you. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Mark it, dude.
This was a valued rug. This was
Yeah, man, it really tied the room together.
This was a valued.
Tied the room together, dude?
My rug.
Were you listening to the dude's story, Donnie?
Walter.
So there it is, folks. That is the interview with Kim as Lil. Well, thank you, and thank you, Dugpa, for bringing us Lil. And thanks, Ben and Bryon, for calling in the middle of it and trying to ruin it. Real nice, guys. I support you all the time, and this is how I'm treated. I won't forget it. It's war. Red Room Podcast versus Twin Peaks Unwrapped. It's wartime. And happy 30th anniversary to Firewalk with me. And thanks, everyone, for listening.